Hi friends, hello and welcome to another video by Fernando Muñoz Bernal and Media Without Means. We are expecting Nury Vittachi to join us anytime soon to talk a little bit about his post on X on Twitter that actually needs a little bit more exposure, needs a little bit more people to hear about it, because he goes into details as to what the coverage has been and what is being found out in Hong Kong about the sentencing of this 45/47 Hong Kong people that are being treated for their involvement in the situation in Hong Kong in 2019. Now, as we wait for Nuri to come, perhaps we could watch his video and go slowly talking about the different details that he presents. He focuses quite a lot on somebody that he likes to call the paymaster. So while we wait for Nuri, let us just play the video and stop and go as we see things that are interesting. So let's add this to the stage and let's play it together. Please let me know if you can hear it in the comment section.
Oh no, I read in the news media today that China jailed 45 innocent Hong Kong people for simply wanting Western-style democracy, so that their home, which looks like this, can be more like the glorious democratic West. As everyone knows, Western democracy produces peerless leaders like this and this, and it produces thriving economies, which grow super fast. Look at these numbers.
All right, I think that the first thing that I would like to mention is the fact that there is a petition going on in the UK right now to run elections once again, talking about Stammer. He has been in power for a very short time, and there's already dissatisfaction with him. So what Nori mentions here is quite interesting, because yeah, it's that kind of leadership that leaves the people behind. No matter who they put in front, it's not performing. The people deserve better. But let's continue with the video.
Wait, no, maybe that's not a good graph to show. Moving on, some of the articles quote Hong Kong's former Great White Saviour, a man named Christ Patton, a man who's not bitter and twisted at all. Anyway, Western mainstream media reports on the latest outrage in Hong Kong are being printed in newspapers across the planet, including in Asia. Guardian headline refers to international outrage, but the text refers to Western countries because only their opinions count.
I I like how he points out the way that Western media likes to use certain language to present narratives. So they are pro-democracy. And one of the things that Nuri goes into detail in this video, as we're going to see later, is that contrast or that parallel with the January 6th insurrectors. So do we need more lettuces? Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. This is so true. The fact how he presents this parallel between the January 6th insurrectors and these rioters in Hong Kong, but media present them as pro-democracy fighters and pro-democracy individuals, and how it is outrageous. So let's go on talking about what he describes as the principal omissions by Western media.
However, what really happened in Hong Kong yesterday was very different. I can explain it in 50 words. Hong Kong courts gave shorter than expected sentences to participants in a regime change plot, which only aspired to incite mayhem with blood on the streets. Sentences ranged from 4 to 10 years, with one of the older members, Claudia Moe, expected to be released by next April. Okay, that's the real story. You know, the Western press reports that
Before moving on, this is extremely important. The fact that these sentences, that the punishment has been so lenient, and a lot of people are not pointing that out, that it's the amount of chaos, the amount of terror that they cause in the city does not seem to match with this sentencing. And some of the people in Hong Kong are actually upset at the fact that they seem to be getting away rather easily. Let's continue.
I've seen are omitting two rather important facts. First, incitement to topple the government is illegal pretty much everywhere. very much so in Asian countries and also in Western countries. Second, most of the people involved pleaded guilty, so Western reporters' criticism of the judgment makes no sense. But behind this and associated cases, we find one key fact you need to know about what's really been going on here. The real mastermind behind all Hong Kong's troubles has never been collared, he's never been named, he's never been identified, may even be a woman. Let's just refer to him or her as the paymaster.
The paymaster. This is the part that is really at the core of what took place in Hong Kong, because all these people were financed, all these people were paid, always these people were organized, and that takes money, that takes funds. Where did these funds come from? We know, and as Nury is going to present, that there were transfers made in and out of different accounts from different people in Hong Kong to actually pay for these actions. But we haven't been able to hear publicly where those funds originated from. We know that some of them came from the United States, some of them came from Canada. So that's the key thing that is missing right here. And it's a point to consider, because what would the diplomatic relations be, how they would be affected if there is information confirming that they came from a specific group or source in the West, either the US, Canada, the UK, wherever that may be. That would be a reason why perhaps these names are redacted, so to speak, or we don't know still out there in the public who this paymaster actually is. Let's continue.
To keep it simple, cue bad guy music.
I love Nury's
Now, there's a really
humor.
important secret money trail under all this from the paymaster. The hidden truth about the Hong Kong protests of 2019 is that they were awash with money, as I've said before. They were absolutely flooded with cash from somewhere, someone. Now, when this particular group of 45, originally 47, anti-China protesters launched their 10-step plot to overthrow the government, law enforcers noted that sums of money were swapping hands. Some of these sums were large. One person got 290,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is about 37,000 US dollars. Now, Hong Kong, like most places, does not allow politicians or political organizers to get secret payments for what they do. Police found one bank account linked to the project containing 1.6 million Hong Kong dollars, and they froze the funds. Where did the money for this regime change operation came from? Who was distributing it, and who got paid what? Regime change? Who likes regime change operations?
Actually, through the case, it is possible to learn a little bit about some of these answers, because basically the people that are standing trial are some of the people that have been identified as the people distributing some of these funds, and this is why they are in trouble, including Cardinal Justice Sens. So let's continue watching, because this is true journalism, and this is the kind of information that does not get shared in Western media, which is why I am putting it out to you for, well, spreading it around so that people really know what took place.
You know, those were the questions that should have been asked, but they weren't really. Instead, the big Western mainstream media outlets did their usual Hong Kong is oppressing the innocent reports, while local Hong Kong people were understandably focused on the rather horrible details of the 10-step plot to overthrow the government. Now, our local media is not very good at investigative journalism, sadly. Mainstream media reports appearing all over the world today completely omit details of the 10-step plan. So let's
This is a very important thing. There was actually a plan to cause mass chaos, destruction, and to terrorize society in Hong Kong that originated in this group and that was financed by these accounts. Why are we not talking about this? Why there's no public reporting on this 10-step plan to overthrow the government of uh, the government in Hong Kong, and in the end affect the stability of China? Um, This is an incredible report by Nori. Let's continue.
Let's quickly explain what it was. I'll do this in less than a minute if I can. So, leader Benny Tai plotted to identify populism-driven candidates to create a block vote of more than 35 members in the Legislative Council and then use it as a massive constitutional weapon to paralyze society. The weapon would veto the budget and freeze all government spending. That's the money that keeps hospitals and schools and utilities running. This would create a state of emergency.
Interesting how the main idea is always to affect the people so that they will revolt. Richard Nephew, in his book The Art of Sanctions, says it very clearly. That's what they did in Iran, try to create unemployment so that people will revolt against the government, and that's how they cause problem. That's what they do in Xinjiang, for example, with all the sanctions, hoping that foreign investors will run away from Xinjiang to avoid the sanctions, therefore causing unemployment and bringing back some of the issues with the population. It's a blueprint that's being used so many times. So to see Benny Tai identify people who could actually help him achieve this in Hong Kong, it's despicable behavior, and you could understand how the citizenry of Hong Kong was upset with what's actually taking place.
What fun. It would eventually generate so much misery and chaos among Hong Kong people that it would force China's leadership to take control of Hong Kong. That, in turn, would provide Washington with justification to hit Hong Kong and mainland China with massive rate sanctions, harming or destroying their economies and forcing regime change. Very nice. Now, Mr. Tai didn't hide details of the plot and spoke about it endlessly, and Jimmy Lai printed it approvingly in his newspaper. It was widely discussed in Hong Kong. The money angle was forgotten, but I didn't forget. Who was the paymaster behind this regime change operation? Now, I'm not going to speculate, let people decide for themselves. Running parallel to this and also active from 2019 onwards was another group of Hong Kong protesters, also pro-violence, also very anti-China, and they too ended up with large mysterious cash payments. They called themselves the Dragon Slaying Brigade, and their court case ended a few days ago with the leaders pleading guilty. Now, the vast majority of the Western media is running a news blackout on that story.
Interesting. This is why media without means is important, as opposed to some people saying that this is irrelevant. We need to let more people know these kind of situations. This dragon slaying brigade, nobody's heard about this in the West, while what they did in Hong Kong had extreme effects in society, and it could be seen on our screens, albeit it was presented as pro-democracy fights. But it's interesting to see how the truth is covered, because it's of no interest to the West, to the powers that be in the West. But we're grateful and thankful and lucky to have people like Nury reporting from the ground.
Because it really upsets their narrative. Here's the story. Someone decided to fly a cluster of Hong Kong protesters to Taiwan for training. Who was it? Who paid for that? Who trained them? And who paid the trainers in Taiwan? Also, someone...
The important questions to be asked. How did these people end up going to Taiwan to be trained? There was also a video that was presented a few years back by the BBC talking about the training that a lot of Hong Kong locals were receiving about how to topple governments, and the green on that reporter, this lady's face, when reporting on what was taking place in this small hotel in the UK, was indicative of how satisfying it is for them to be able to move cards and move pieces on the chessboard to give trouble to China and Hong Kong in this particular case. I'll probably link that video if I find it, but it's really upsetting to know that it's out in the open. This is what they do in this room. They teach people how to fight and how to be effective in toppling governments. Really despicable.
Advised these people that money for their protests will be delivered through a crowdfunding route. They obediently set up such a page, and it worked like a dream. So much cash was delivered to them that leader Wong Chun-kearn gave himself a stress relief break in which he spent 300,000 Hong Kong dollars on football betting. Where did his money come from? At the time, Western and Eastern governments were sharing warnings that crowdfunding was a new route for terrorist funding. And
This shines a light into a problem that is present in today's society. This crowdfunding of movements that can present a certain phase, but the money will end up causing trouble in society around the world. Crowdfunding used to be a way to help some organizations do what they do. I have a donate button in my website, mediawithoutmeans.org, but it's the same thing that I had when I had PayPal, when I had Buy Me a Coffee. It's the same thing, and the amounts are never close to what we are discussing here with Nury. We're talking about millions. At one point, we're going to hear billions of Hong Kong dollars being funneled to some of these organizers. So crowdfunding needs a bit more legislation, if you ask me.
Hong Kong protesters are the textbook example, literally spending crowd-funded cash on bombs and guns to kill innocent people. Luckily, the Hong Kong police foiled the plot just a few hours before the bombs were due to be set off. So who was the paymaster there? Where did that cash originate? And there is a third example. The trial of Trump fanatic tycoon Jimmy Lai is running in Hong Kong at the moment. Now, the international media is choosing not to report the actual details of the hearings. And it's easy to see why. Too much is being revealed. One of the things the court heard was that huge amounts of international money flowed into Jimmy Lai's bank accounts, and large sums of cash went out to anti-China individuals and groups. The tabloid publisher received 2.945 billion Hong Kong dollars in his 9 bank accounts in recent years.
Think about that. That's nearly 3 billion Hong Kong dollars that he received from outside to his 9 accounts related to Apple Daily. And now Nury is going to reveal something else that is interesting. The fact that actually Apple Daily was losing tons of money daily. So it wasn't coming from his industries. It wasn't coming from his businesses. It wasn't coming from Giordano, the brand, the clothing brand that he owned and he operated even in China. So where was that money coming from? Let's watch.
With the deposits coming from the United States, Canada, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and elsewhere. The money is said to have been derived from overseas securities trading. Very nice if you can get it. But the money didn't sit in the accounts. Chunks of finance went out to multiple China hostile political individuals and groups in Hong Kong, and also to the US and the UK. Now, the biggest individual recipient named was Cardinal Joseph Zen.
This is a cardinal whose name has been used a lot by elements claiming that Hong Kong is losing its freedom of religion, that there is no freedom of religion in China anymore, that there's no freedom of religion in Hong Kong anymore. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are seeing this person implicated in handling funds that end up being used to cause terror and chaos in society. He is far from his functions as a leader of faith in Hong Kong. Let's learn a bit more.
A retired Hong Kong churchman who has fallen out with his colleagues, including Pope Francis, over his relentless China bashing. The cardinal received $3.5 million in 2017. So how did Jimmy Lai have so much money, given that his newspaper was losing $1 million a day, week after week, month after month, year after year? Now, you'll notice that we've talked about large sums of money funding regime change protests without mentioning the most notorious source of all, Washington's National Endowment for Democracy, or NED. The NED started funding and training groups in Hong Kong in 1994, with more cash and more groups year by year. Over the next 25 years, by 2019, it spent literally a quarter of a century demonizing mainland China.
Now, I find this very interesting that while the British ruled Hong Kong, there wasn't really any democracy at all. They were ruled by somebody assigned by the UK, plain and simple. But right before it was going to be handed over by 1997, there were a lot of forces interested in teaching about democracy. So the people who allege, oh, China, Hong Kong's democracy is lost, really need to be asked, what were you talking about democracy before the handover? This NED appearance in 1994, 3 years before the handover, is indicative of the seeds that were being planted so that they would stay after the handover and run all kinds of black operations from this very important city in Asia. Hong Kong went through a very painstaking process of ridding itself of all these kind of individuals that were affecting and inciting manipulation of the political government, of the political scene in Hong Kong.
Their efforts profoundly affected the views of Hong Kong young people and older people, working journalists, and the political classes in the city generally. Now, there's a lot of irony here. Ned's main theme was to say that workers were terribly mistreated by the Chinese government, in contrast to the glorious West. But the International Labour Organization, which actually rates countries on their treatment of workers, has long said that China adheres better to labour protection rules than the US does.
Another element to remember about this riots in 2019 and this color revolution and this umbrella movement is that at the time in 2019, Hong Kong was ranked third in the world in terms of freedoms. The United States on that year was ranked 17th. So when you want to improve democracy, excuse me, when you want to improve the freedom of citizens, there are means that go beyond destroying infrastructure, destroying ATMs, destroying subway stations, killing individuals like it took place, stabbing police, setting the banks on fire, breaking windows, causing all this chaos and terror in a city. If you're fighting for freedom, that is not the way. That is not the tool to use to fight for more freedom, particularly when you are already at number 3 ranking in the world.
I was one of the people caught up by all this. I marched with the so-called pro-democracy movement for 30 years. Had I known at the time that the people at Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor were actually salaried staff of the US State Department, of course I would have thrown down my banner and walked out. We all would. We thought we were marching for Hong Kong, not for US manipulators. Now, in that instance, we know who the paymaster was. The NED has been chased out of Hong Kong now, thank God, but is still doing its tricks in numerous countries around the world. Check out Moldova, Georgia. So we've talked about 4 instances of cash sloshing around the Hong Kong protests. Here's number 5. A link to Time magazine in 2020 revealed that a unit of Radio Free Asia was secretly steering a payment of $2 million for anti-China protesters in Hong Kong. Radio Free Asia has nothing to do with radios or Freedom or Asia. It's a Washington-based government operation designed to subtly control the narrative to ensure the US is seen as the rightful world leader.
It's always important to point out whenever you see somebody retweeting or trying to push narrative published by Radio Free Asia. You got to let them know what they are exactly. There's tons of pictures out there showing exactly what they represent. Radio Free Asia, Radio Europe, Radio Free Europe. They also had Radio Free America, Radio Free Latin America. They basically established all these organizations to manipulate the information that people received with regards to what was taking place in their own countries and see them through the light of American interests.
Not China. I could go on, but I'm going to stop here and end with a question. Is if some paymaster is paying for Hong Kong protesters to be flown to Taiwan.
Hi, friends. I would like to take a moment to address this person right here. Okay? This person is saying that I am trying to lie. So at the risk of not being nice to Nury, I would like to share with you our agreement that he will be here today at 8 o'clock. So there you go. Unfortunately, things happen. It's been dreadful weather down here in Guangdong. So I don't know. He didn't show up. I'm doing the best I can to give you the information that is relevant. So, V, if you want to leave, just leave.
Taiwan, trained in street fighting, and then returned to Hong Kong, where they prepare a terrorist-style mass casualty bombing. That's pretty serious stuff. We need to find out who is the paymaster. At one of the Jimmy Lai hearings, the court heard from Andy Lee Yu Hin, a top member of Stand with Hong Kong, an anti-China group campaigning for Western countries to sanction their home city and their home country. Now, Andy Lee said that a $600,000 escape plan had been arranged for him. He expected to jump bail in Hong Kong and escape by boat to Taiwan. Then he would be put on a diplomatic flight to Europe. Diplomatic flights don't go through the usual passport checks.
This is interesting. Whenever you talk about people who, are outside of China, criticizing China, it happens a lot with this East Turkestan movement, and there's people who have escaped and end up in Western countries bashing China. A question that is asked by Jerry Gray all the time is, how did they leave the country? Did they leave the country to a point of entry with a passport and a visa to a final destination, or were they extracted somehow by forces that we don't know? And that's how they ended up in another country. A name that comes to mind is Freedom Enes Kanter. Something similar happened to him, and he was basically extracted and ended up as a basketball player in the United States. That's an interesting story that I made in a video when I talked about religious freedoms here in China a few years back. So how people end up in the West is something that we need to ask questions about whenever they are faced with a camera and a microphone. Explain how you ended up in the West. Let's continue.
Then from Europe, he would fly to London and then be put on another plane to his eventual destination, the United States. So there's a clue there. Now, if Andy Lee hadn't been arrested by the Chinese Coast Guard, perhaps he would have finally met the ultimate mysterious paymaster, whoever he or she is. Peace.
So, guys, there's the video. That's what I wanted to discuss. I had my notes all prepared to talk with Nury and discuss more into detail everything that he has been reporting in a way that only Nury can do, with his humor, with his glasses, with his understanding of today's viral videos. He has been great at doing that. I just wanted to do my bit and let more people know about the information that he's bringing to the forefront, so that more people understand what is actually taking place in Hong Kong. As I said, we will continue to provide you with more information from around the world about stories that haven't been told. An example is this particular case. Well, guys, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, if you like this kind of content, if you want to support the work that I do, make sure to subscribe to mediawithoutmeans.org in the website, or to this channel, Media Without Means. Vermove is just becoming a channel to bring people to subscribe and follow this new channel, which isn't monetized. The website isn't monetized, and this channel, Media Without Means, is not monetized. What I hope to do is get more people to hear these stories. And well, without further ado, I bid you farewell. See you on another video very soon. Bye for now.